Hello, and welcome back to Johann Sebastian Bach. That's me. Part 2. My first great musical period, Return to Weimar, 1708 to 1717. So when I last left you, I married my second cousin, Maria Barbara, and we began having what would later become 7 children. Just look at them all. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, I love them. These 2 would later become composers themselves. And so the Bach family music continues. And who are those other 2? Well, those are also my sons who later became composers. But that's for another marriage. Another time. I began to really write some pretty clever stuff, like the one you're hearing now, the Well-Tempered Clavier. I started to write the preludes and fugues, which would later become assembled into this monumental work. I was inspired by many composers of this time, but I didn't meet many of them. Just look at them. There's Handel, Vivaldi, Telemann. Well, I didn't get to meet Handel or Vivaldi, but I did know Telemann. My homies! Now in 1708, I had a job, but I did not like my job. I tried to get out of my job. My boss would not let me, even put me in jail for being impertinent. Whatever. I finally got out of that one. On to my second great musical period, Curtain, 1717 to 1723. I was hired by Prince Leopold, and man, I was killing it. He gave me so much freedom. I wrote loads of stuff. I always do, so deal with it. Like the Brandenburg Concertos, which you hear here, number 3, and then number 5. I made 6 in total. I composed mainly non-religious works since the prince didn't ask for much on Sundays. So out with the cantatas, motets, and masses, and in with the orchestral suites, cello suites, sonatas, and violin partitas. Partitos in the house, everyone. Remember George Frederick Handel, born the same year as me? Well, I made a 22-mile journey from Curtin to Halle with the intention of meeting Handel. But when I got there, he had left town. What gives, man? Some sadness. As you might have guessed, my dear beloved Maria Barbara died. I was off to work with the prince in another town, and I received word 2 months after she had died that she had passed. What a terrible, terrible surprise that was. My dear wife. I don't know the cause of her death, but some people think maybe it was an infectious disease or complications from a pregnancy. Although I did grieve for my dear Maria Barbara, I did find love again in Anna Magdalena. She was an accomplished singer who became my second wife. We had a shared interest in music, and it contributed to our happy marriage. She continued to sing professionally after our marriage, even singing at Prince Leopold's funeral. Together, we raised the children from my first marriage and had 13 children of our own. If you're doing the math, then yes, I had 20 children. 7 from my first, 13 from my second, 20 children. Sadly, only 10 survived into adulthood. Even though that was the way back then, it was still sad to lose a child. On to my third great musical period, Leipzig, 1723 to 1750. I had a new job as cantor at a church, which is the highest ranking job. I was the music director for 4 main churches in Leipzig, Germany. I even beat out Telemann for the job, but that might be because he declined the position. Anyways, I wrote over 300 cantatas. That's huge! That's a multi-movement work, about 20 minutes long each. And yes, here you are listening to my Mass in B minor. Don't forget that one. That's a good one. I also became the director of a Collegium Musicum. That's the local university's best of the best musician ensemble. I wasn't even tempted to call up as soon as a goat. My seal! I used this throughout my Leipzig years. Do you see my initials J, S, and B right there? Now do you see them mirrored on the opposite side? Yes, but now here's my favorite part. If you slide them over, like that, and like that. Ha-ha! Can you see my initials now? I visited King Frederick II of Prussia, and he was a composer in his own right. He shared with me this lovely melody, and I decided to take it to heart. I composed a little fugue for him and made my own musical offering, with his melody as my inspiration. Look at me adding notes here, adding a line there. Typical of my fashion. Can you hear the melody represented in different places? There it is, hidden with the circles. I suppose you would like to know how I died. And now begins my death and my legacy, 1750 to present day. First, you have to understand there was this man named John Taylor, and the other thing you have to understand is that eye surgery was not what it is today. I'm sure John Taylor thought he knew what he was doing when he took Handel and worked on his eyes, but Handel was pretty sure that's what made him blind, and I'm pretty sure that's what killed me. Yes, I died 3 days after I had a stroke that many believe was brought on by that surgery. My body was laid in an oak coffin and hauled to a cemetery outside the city walls of Leipzig. Like many burials back then, no headstone was placed to mark my spot. Within years, the exact location of my grave had faded from memory. But there was a grave digger who remembered a story of where I had been buried, and so they dug, and they believed they found my bones. And that's where you see me, laid to rest, inside, in an altar at the St. Thomas Church in Leipzig. But is that my body? Now, for the question, what did I look like? No one can be sure, as although several portraits of me exist, I didn't sit for any of them. Unlike fellow composers that came after me, like Beethoven, Liszt, Mendelssohn, they all had death masks. People would put plaster over their dead faces and pull the mold and see what they actually looked like for posterity, but I didn't have that benefit, and so they dug up my skull and took models of that, and they reconstructed this image. So what do you think? Is he a handsome fellow or what? Ha! And is that even really my skull? Ha ha! I left a great legacy of music. Many composers after me would study my music, but people in the public kind of forgot about me. It wasn't until the 1800s that people really started to remember my music. And now we had a Bach resurgence. People even had fun, saying that I had a 21st child out of my 20, and that his name was PDQ Bach. This, of course, is not true. It was created by a music composer named Peter Schickele, and he was quite fun about it.
2, 3, 4.
He would say he discovered music from my supposedly estranged 21st child, PDQ Bach. And as you can see, PDQ Bach's creations are always quite interesting. Actually, I find them quite funny. Bravo, son! Not real son. And so now you get the joke, because if I really did have 21 children out of my 20, and the 21st wrote music that was meant to be played so distastefully, well, I just might disown him. In this case, it's just fun.
Professor Peter Schickele, with his recent discovery of a composition by the late composer PDQ Bach, Concertstück for 2 violins mid-orchestra, with Itzhak Perlman and John Williams and the Boston Pops Orchestra.
And now we have reached the end of my life and my legacy. I hope you've enjoyed learning about me, and remember, to do your best in everything that you do. And don't call anybody nanny goats. I didn't know I would be so lastingly famous and so well respected by other composers. But I did know this, that I would work my best and do my best and learn everything I could. And that is what makes me so epic. Ha ha!